Hey there, and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug Season 6 review. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop. Noe? I don't know. I'm trying my best here. But anyway, this episode had a lot of revelations, and I'll be honest, it was probably the first episode of the season that had me somewhat saying, meh. Don't get me wrong, I still think the episode was good, but it just didn't wow me in the same way that I've seen previously this season. In terms of the overarching plot and mysteries, they went in a direction that seemed cool at first, and then had me going, really? At the end. Then, for an episode that was seemingly spotlighting Milan, I kind of thought it was going to be a massive episode for her, like El Toro di Piedra was for Ivan. Not so much, though. It did about as much for her character as Sleeping Siren did for Kim. Actually, scratch that. Sleeping Siren made him seem a lot worse than usual, so I guess we'll go with it just doing not much for her character. Whatever, though. Let's get into the episode, shall we? We start off with a fun little cold open where the gang are having a fun beach day on one of those artificial beaches in the Seine. They really seem to hit the beach quite a lot these days, don't they? So is this version of Paris just absurdly clean and always has been? Is this part of that new utopia that Miss Bustier somehow shaped Paris into in a matter of weeks? Because I'm pretty sure that the Seine in our world is famously infested with E. coli, which, if you don't know, is the bacteria you find in poop. Like many city rivers, it is shit water, and if you swim in it, you're gonna get sick. I know they made an effort to clean it up for the poor bastards who had to do the marathon swim and the triathlon in the Olympics, but I figured that would be a one-time thing, and then it would go back to being foul. This year, though, apparently they actually opened up swimming spots for the first time in 100 years. They closed it previously because even in the 1920s, when nobody gave a shit about healthcare standards with all the smoking and the drinking and the dust and the factories and residential areas, even they thought, nah, that's nasty. Despite all that, I would still hesitate to swim there, but in Miraculous Land, it's not even a problem. In fact, they seemingly developed these swimming spots in Miraculous first, so Miraculous Paris is better than real Paris. That's confirmation. Well, except for the whole supervillain being able to possess you if you stub your toe deal. That'd probably be a bit of a bummer. Anyway, we have some cute bonding going on with some of the couples and Max hanging out and having fun. Marinette and Adrien are lying on the sand, being all romantic when he gets a text from Natalie telling him that somebody wants to meet him to talk about his father's legacy. Poor kid can't catch a break, can he? First they want him to approve this brand new giant statue, and now he's being bothered again when he's only newly orphaned. When he goes off to get some ice cream, Marinette begins to talk to Tiki, who asks her if she's okay, before Marinette talks about how she actually feels fine, although, once again, she brings up the fact that she's lying to Adrien about the truth. So once again, they're bringing up this plot point. It feels like the fact that she's lying to him is being mentioned every other episode now. So I really do think that this, along with Adrien slowly getting more interested in trying to figure out why none of this makes sense, means that before the season's through, we're gonna get some sort of big blow up. Then again, I might just be huffing some industrial grade hopium in that I don't want this to become some insanely drawn out plot point like we saw in the first saga. Hell, some of those plot points are still lingering and uncompleted now. We head to the opening, and when we return, it's for a nice little puff piece about how much good Miss Bustier has done for the city. Seriously, she's transformed it completely in what can only be a couple of weeks. She's apparently made it possible to grow your own food in the city, although, to be fair, I'm pretty sure Paris already had rooftop gardening and whatnot. The city has also seemingly given up attempting to recoup any of the money it takes to fund public transport, and now it all comes out of taxes. It feels perhaps a bit short-sighted, but at the same time, it makes for a cheaper commute at the very least. Miss Bustier's also created a youth council that seems to almost entirely consist of former students of hers. It's got to be in the hundreds of thousands of people in Paris that could be considered youths, and these are her youth council reps? Suspicious. So much for everybody has a voice. Oh wait, never mind, there are side characters with truly hideous, low-quality character models on the side of the shot when they're doing the finale for the video. They just don't matter enough for literally any of them to be properly in the shot, and it zooms out so fast you hardly see them. Hilariously, all the members of the kingdom, or whatever they're called, are sitting on their Zoom call having a massive cry that they ended up making this video. They think that the fact that this video is done well online is dangerous for their goals and could weaken their control. I do wonder what their goal is here. Based on this and the fact that only Tomoe is supposedly working towards getting the Miraculouses, and prior to that it was just Gabe, and then there's also the fact that Tomoe thought that Gabe was being a fool in that flashback sequence where he asked for help in Yaxi Gozen, it suddenly makes me think that the wish is not their primary objective, just one of them. It's still early days and we do need to know more, but I guess they have some sort of goal in mind that they can achieve even without magic? Interesting. They ominously decide that they're going to regain control, and then the scene moves on. It's over to Fred, who's giving a mime performance for the sick kids at the hospital. Oh, good guy, Fred. Some of the Miraculous gang are there watching, as is his manager / former director of that mime show that he was in. Apparently, in the time since we've seen her, she's had a bit of a personality transplant. In the episode The Mime, I remember her being this long-suffering director who didn't want to fire him from the show, but felt like she had no choice. Here, she seems like a female Bob Roth, and it persists across the entire episode. This was my first, what? moment. A moment where it felt like the episode went completely off the rails and didn't pay attention to its own continuity. It felt like a massive departure from the previous saga to me, and I didn't much care for it. She tells him that she has a big audition for him, and when Mylène tells him to go for it, he agrees, although he isn't told what the movie is or what the part would be. Fair enough as well. I feel like this isn't that out of the realm of possibility. You don't want some salty actor who got rejected trying to leak anything, do you? Moving on, we cut over to Adrien and Marinette, who are leaving with Manon around that same time. Manon's trying to encourage Adrien to stay so they can play house with Marinette being the mum and Adrien being the dad. He can't stay though because he has that meeting after all. Side note, when Natalie and Gorilla roll down the window and smile at him, it's just so nice, but also very funny. Natalie being part of a secret society / cult aside, it's never not funny to me that not a single member of this trio seems to actually care that Gabe is dead. Adrien just more wonders why his dad changed and is searching for the truth. And so the difference in how they acted pre and post Gabe pushing up daisies is so hilarious to me. Imagine not a single person in your immediate circle caring that you died. Hell, even his parents didn't seem that cut up about it. I know they were estranged, but still, it was their son. Yikes. I kind of figured the scene would then cut over to the meeting because that's the scene that I was really the most interested in. I wanted to know what the meeting was about and whether it was to do with this kingdom business, but instead, we're over to Marinette's place to spend time with Manon playing games. Manon is widely considered to be one of the most annoying and hated characters on the show. Thus, whilst I wasn't all that excited for a scene where she plays games with Marinette whilst getting set off and screaming when Marinette ignores her because she's waiting for news from Adrien, at the same time, I couldn't help but laugh a little at the mental image of fans all around the world glaring at the screen with a throbbing forehead vein of rage, seeing this kid and hearing her nails on the chalkboard whine. That being said, was it also not a little bit dodgy for Marinette to be straight up ignoring this little kid, given that she is paid to look after her? Regardless, who asked for this scene, you know? Follow up on the interesting plot points. I'm begging you, Fred or Adrien, either of them will do. Thankfully, it's then over to Fred, who arrives for his audition before it pretty much instantly cuts away. It's almost as if this scene didn't need to be there at all, to tell you the truth. Could have simply followed up on that storyline with a scene of him arriving back home to tell Mylène the news. Man, I feel like I'm being so salty and critical. Reminds me of the old days making episode reviews. Then it's finally over to Adrien, who's in the midst of listening to a proposal from some random dude we've never met before, to end up buying the Gabriel Agreste brand and incorporate it into the group he's part of. Dude looks evil. You can tell just by looking at the way he's styled, and then he's talking about how Gabe was his idol / role model, and immediately that, coupled with the context of the kingdom making moves in this episode, indicates that he is bad news. He hands over his proposal, and Adrien gives it a look before asking for Natalie's advice. You know, the woman he views as a mother. He asks her to give him some advice, and she clearly doesn't like what she sees in that contract. I'm guessing Adrien would be screwed over by this deal, and she knows it, and the other dude knows it too, and yet she doesn't shut it down. She tells Adrien to just give it some thought, because this dude is part of the club. Trash, Natalie, trash. The more I see, the more worried I get that she's legit gonna go with the flow like she did with Gabe until it's pretty much too late. With every episode we get closer to the endgame of Gorilla somehow becoming Adrien's legal guardian against the odds. I don't know, I'm just really worried that they had this great moral dilemma at the end of season 5, with Natalie being reformed but still holding this terrible secret, and now they're gonna throw it away in favor of Natalie siding with the kingdom, even if she doesn't really want to and feels bad about it. I just don't like that creative direction. Moving on, the episode shifts over to Fred and Mylène, where Fred's late for dinner and Mylène, having anxiety and caring a lot about her beloved dad, is freaking out. Mullo's trying to get her to calm down, but it's not working, and so all she can do is pace. I've been there. Fred returns, and for some reason, despite knowing his daughter has anxiety, as I think he would have had to sign off on her getting therapy, as she mentioned in Reckless Driver, this dude thinks, oh, I know, I'll fake her out and make her think that not only did I not get the role, but something terrible's happened to my career. After all, beforehand, he clearly did not care that much about getting the part and just figured, what the heck? So for him to be this cut up after the audition means something terrible must have happened. I know it's all happy afterwards, but still, massive dickhead maneuver from Dad right here. Oh yes, woe is me, my life is over because I have to read this massive script. He tells Mylène he's already signed the contract because he wasn't allowed to get the script before he did so, and this is going to be their first read through together. Man, that is cute, I'll tell you what. He may have been wild for his entrance, but he does seem like a good dad. They sit down to eat beforehand, and here we get a line that confused me a little bit. Mylène apologizes to him for having to put his career to one side to raise her. He tells her that it was more than worth it because the memories and moments they shared were priceless. Then we had another one of those moments that felt odd and that almost seemed like a bit of a retcon. He talked about how he regrets being away from Mylène and her mother when she was young, and then Mylène tells her that if she was still here, she'd be proud of Fred both for getting the role and being a super dad. However, I thought they said that the mum ditched out on the family. Is that not what Mylène said in that flashback to the year prior when Marinette had a crush on Kim and they were talking about why Chloe was so awful? Did Rose not mention that they need to be understanding towards Chloe because her mum left her when she was young, but then Mylène chimes in to say she's the same and she's not a terrible person? I suppose now her mum's dead instead, but I kind of think that's a very different context to Chloe's situation then, so something doesn't add up. feels like they've changed it. Because if she has ditched out on the family still, the things they're saying here make no sense. That final line about feeling her with them, she's got to be dead. We briefly check in with Adrien, who calls Marinette and asks if he can come over to talk, before it's back to Mylène and Fred, who sit down to read the script. It quickly becomes clear that this is an extreme propaganda piece designed to ruin the reputation of the Miraculous, and as Mylène slowly grows more angry, Fred grows more upset, because this is not what he was told it was going to be. He calls his agent, who once again channels the personality of Bob Roth, and tells him that moral convictions are like uncomfortable seats. If you want to enjoy the movie, you need to forget about them. I really don't understand why they didn't just use Bob Roth for this part and instead have him as some representative of the company making the film. I know that this is just small potatoes at the end of the day, and ultimately her character doesn't matter, but still, I find it so weird. Also, it's quite funny that every time a film agent or an executive appears in this show, they are horrendous people. I feel like the writers may have a little bit of a bone to pick. He tells her that he's not going to act in the movie, and she tells him tough luck, he signed the contract, welcome to the adult world. Man, she's a pretty shitty agent. This film was quite literally propaganda against the Miraculous, who seem to be massively popular. In the real world, it would be very unlikely to shift public opinion, and people would shred it on social media. This dude's career would be ruined. Shouldn't she care about that? This would be like signing up to star in a Taylor Swift biopic that is meant to tear her down. Your career would be over. Who would do this? Apparently, he's not even allowed to quit his contract, even though it's only been signed for a couple of hours. I feel like any real film studio in this context would simply say, okay, whatever, bye-bye. As the terms of your release for your contract, please sign this NDA, and it would be done with. But nothing so simple in the world of Miraculous. Well, unless it's in regards to Miss Bustier transforming the city overnight. Then apparently it is that simple. Back over to Marinette's place, Adrien's come over and is showing Marinette the offer, and is just all worried and upset. Meanwhile, Manon's in the room hanging out. Probably should be waiting until the 4-year-old goes home to start talking through all this serious stuff though, right? Mylène then calls and asks whether Nadia's picked up Manon because she wants to swing by and talk to her, which then leads to a live script reading in Marinette's bedroom. The plot of the movie is very deeply inflammatory. It essentially makes the accusation that Ladybug and Canoir have been working with Monarch the entire time as a way to manipulate and control Paris for their own agenda. A journalist discovers this and takes the news to Gabriel Agreste and asks for help as Gabe is a widely respected figure. In the end though, Gabe is murdered by the heroes, as is the journalist, but not before sending out his evidence to the makers of this very movie. Oh, and they also killed off Monarch just to tie off any loose ends. So the Kingdom, through the power of film and plausible deniability since it is just a story, make the accusation that Cat Noir and Ladybug are evil, and that the new butterfly user is probably their brand new accomplice. It was quite a violent and scary ending, and of course, I noticed for some reason, Manon is still in the room, and she gets upset by this. Stop traumatizing this poor little girl. Are Tom and Sabine not home? Can one of them not briefly watch her for a minute or two? What is going on here? They ask Nadia to report about it on her show, and yet, I have to ask, is that even legal? Couldn't they get in a shit ton of trouble for broadcasting and leaking this script? I don't know if Nadia and the news could get in trouble, but Mr. Mime could, couldn't he? Both for sharing the script with others and then also giving it over to the broadcast on the news. Even if they were successful in getting a lobby going that gets the film cancelled, they could still sue him into oblivion for some pretty egregious breach of contract, couldn't they? So she marches over to the news station with the script, but bad luck. Eagle-eyed watchers would have noticed that when, Noe was making his pitch to Adrien, that he actually had the news station as part of his portfolio of brands. Must have been very recent because he's seemingly having his first board memming when Nadia bursts in. Of course, as was clear from his eye contact with Natalie earlier, he seems to be part of the Kingdom and is likely the owner of the company making the film too. Thus, Nadia gets fired, as they all find out when sitting down to watch the news bulletin, to discover she's been replaced by costumed comedy character Mr. Banana, who is now reading out vaguely right-wing conspiracy-coded reports. Namely, that Ms. Bustier, the popular mayor, was elected via fraud. This is another one of those ridiculous things that could quite literally only happen in the world of Miraculous, isn't it? For my fellow Australians, this would be like if Prime Possum turned up on 7 News ranting about boat people, if Paddington Bear was revealed as a reporter for the BBC parroting pro-Putin and Eurosceptic opinions, or if Elmo rocked up on Fox News talking about how Rosetta the Muppet's an illegal and needs to be investigated, that Sesame Street's gone to shit and they need to clean up the streets by calling in the National Guard, and that they need to own the libs even harder. In any real-world scenario though, using a character like Mr. Banana as a legitimate newsreader would get you laughed out of the building and clowned on for eternity. With every new scheme, the Kingdom looks more and more incompetent. Coming after Miss Bustier using a joke newsreader, and making a hit-piece movie about how 2 beloved national heroes are actually evil. You can tell they're billionaires because they're so out of touch that they actually think this would work. If they wanted to make a difference, they should have pooled their wealth and paid for a horde of Russian bots to run a smear campaign on Twitter. Oh, sorry, on X. Noe appears on the news and declares that he intends to run for mayor if the allegations are proven true. Just what the world needs, another billionaire mayor with no experience. Adrien realizes that this is the dude who was trying to buy his company, and he's also the dude making the film, and this in turn gets Mime having a breakdown and locking herself in her bedroom. Once again, for God's sake, poor Manon! Just seeing all this shit, seeing everyone crash out, why is Nadia watching with her little daughter in her arms as the dad tries to calm her through the door? I mean, I know that kids are not made of glass, but geez! I feel like you're supposed to somewhat shield your kids when they're that young. You're not supposed to do something like this. Oh look kiddo, the world sucks and we're all owned by corpos who can ruin our lives with the stroke of a pen. Good luck out there. Alone with Mime, Mullo tries to calm her down but it doesn't work and Milen's akumatized but she instantly rejects it. Pretty impressive. That might be the quickest rejection we've ever actually seen. She screams out to leave her alone and her dad interprets this as being directed as him. And now he gets angry. Not at Mime but at the company that's made this happen. The people who hurt his little girl. Not on his watch. And so he stomps off and the Akuma finds a new target. He gets akumatized into the Mime whilst Adrien and Marinette go off to transform. I did enjoy the fact that he is so mad at first that he doesn't even want to talk to Chrysalis, and in fact, he wants to make Mime proud by only using his words and not giving in. I really enjoy seeing how Lila has to whittle them down and get them to see things her way, as opposed to Gabe always bulldozing them and essentially forcing them to do his bidding. To me, this makes her feel more intimidating, more psychological, and less Saturday morning cartoon than Gabe was. Great writing here. This is where the episode really starts to hit its stride. The Mime episode in the first saga was a whole heap of fun that was really creative and exciting for its time with a lot of great action. This is no exception. They play some of the greatest hits as he battles and tries to escape from Ladybug and Cat Noir, like invisible walls, doors, and then all the various different vehicles and weapons he uses. He blasts his way into the TV studio hunting after Noe, who for once is a character that has a plan and a way to protect himself. He sends in his goons, of which they have a grand total of 2 repeated character models again and again and again, to fight the Mime, who beats the absolute hell out of them with nunchucks. Ouch. It takes a fair while after this for Ladybug to reverse the damage that he inflicts, so these poor schmucks are going to be laying there for quite a while with broken bones and concussions. I did enjoy that Noe had these security guards and all the different decoy cars to help him escape. It makes him seem like a really competent character. That's another thing I'm loving about this new era of the writing. The villains seem to be legitimately competent at what they do. They don't just fail upwards. The Mime goes in search of the car that he's in, whilst also continually dodging Ladybug and Cat Noir, who have honed in on the fact that the Akuma's in his hat. Mime then does something really smart. He uses his power to create a safe to hide his hat inside so they can never actually beat him, because let's be real, you'd never find the safe. Also, I guess this means that his power from Chrysalis is much better than his power from Hawkmoth. I'm pretty sure in his debut episode he could only use one Mime at a time, and they exploited that to beat him. Unless I'm remembering that wrong, of course. Regardless, it's like the villains learn from their earlier mistakes. Once again, competent villains make for better and more creative episodes. And this episode really is more creative. The ending at the very least. They know that they can't beat him in battle now because they can't turn him back. Instead, they actually have to help him achieve his goal in talking to Noe. This is a first, actually achieving the villain's goal. In order to do so, Ladybug calls in Ivan and Mime, who's had a pretty poor showing in an episode that felt like it was meant to flesh her out even further. It started strong with her showing her bond with her dad and all, but I just don't feel like it went anywhere. She becomes anxious and hides and eventually goes to save her dad and give him a speech that felt very similar to her words earlier in the episode. I don't know, I just feel like it could have been so much more for a character. She and Ivan both separately suit up and off they go. With Ivan's help, the heroes pretty much instantly capture the Mime, whilst Mime uses her power to split and find the correct car before kidnapping Noe. Man, wish we could have seen that part. Would have been very funny. They then set up a camera back at the studio and reveal all the BS that Noe's been spewing, which then leads to Mime shrinking down to whisper in her dad's ear, which allows him to throw off his Akuma and confront this man, who apologizes and, like a true businessman, weasels his way out of any real responsibility by claiming he was also duped by the script. Ladybug reverses everything. Nadia starts up a new podcast on the Zoo Network, with her first guest being Miss Bustier, who was found to have been innocent of any election fraud. I wonder if Mr. Banana is still going to be the host of the TV show going forward, or are they going to find somebody else? Still such a wild plot twist. Fred gets a new show, and I wonder if it's going to be on stage or TV, and then Marinette ponders the new threat that Noe poses before the post-credit scene reveals who he actually is. I mean, yeah, I thought his face looked familiar, but I was too busy being excited for a brand new villain. I was thinking, hell yeah, before that bucket of cold water got me when it turns out he's Audrey's never-before-seen oldest child. Or rather, the oldest child that we know of. I feel like I would have been more hyped up by this if Zoe didn't already exist, having played a similar spot of being her hidden child never before mentioned until she was introduced. Here though, I was just like, oh, really? I mean, it could end up being awesome, but right now it just kind of seems goofy. I suppose this is how Chloe rejoins the story then. Then again, now there's an actual bad guy child, maybe Chloe can become a midpoint between him and Zoe and become somewhat rehabilitated. Maybe not. So it seems that he is the new Diamond of the Kingdom, replacing Gabe. Looks like a tangled web starting to form here with lots of betrayal on the horizon. Audrey's clearly in the kingdom, and now he is too. They'll obviously be working together, and likely have plans to betray the others, judging by how this family operates. Then there's Tomoe, who's overtly working with Natalie, as we know from El Toro de Piedra, but Natalie's supposed to betray her in favor of her father. Meanwhile, Tomoe is also secretly working with Lila in some capacity, as we saw in Yakushi Gozen. In that respect, I think it does add some complexity to the story, and I'm enjoying the build of the group. I'm just not sure he needed to be her secret son. So yeah, it wasn't a bad episode. There was still a lot to like, and the whole middle section with the action sequences were great. It's just, there were some character inconsistencies. It didn't flesh out Milen enough, and some of the twists were goofy. A good episode by the standards of yesteryear, but not by the standards of season 6 so far. It's probably my least favourite episode we've seen, to tell you the truth. With all that being said though, these have been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of Noe? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.